Hello, Dr. Vahid and dear classmates. This is Du Heran. My metric number is GS56194. Today I'm going to do a presentation of a critical review of 5 journal articles that I have read related to second language learning. And first of all, this is the contents of my presentation. 1. Introducing the 5 articles. Number 2. Comparing the rationale, research questions, method, results, etc. of each articles. Number 3. Drawing conclusion. Number 4. Uh, I will talk about my own perspectives on these 5 articles. This is the part 1. As you can see, these are the titles of these 5 articles, and as you can observe here, they were all published in recent 5 years, so they can provide us a very in-depth and useful information and ideas. So let's check it out. This is the part 2 of my presentation. In this table, I only compare the rationale and research questions and aims of these 5 articles. Let's take a look at the rationale first. In A1, it said that in Chinese context, there are few studies that collect and analyze authentic examples of L1 transfer errors caused by Chinese English learners. And in A2, the intimate relationship exists between language and culture. Detecting the negative transfer of native culture and offering solutions will become an effective way to improve both teachers' and students' writing proficiency. In A3, the author said that in former studies, a large number of researchers focus mainly on the pronunciation problems in a certain area of China, ignoring the differences among several areas in one paper. And in A4, uh, the researchers think that the learning of vocabulary can be viewed as the core of English learning. It is a key factor to understand the function of language transfer in English vocabulary acquisition. And in A5, a type of interference which only deals with syntactic errors need to be discovered in the Pakistani context is the rationale of this study. And let's move on to the right hand. Since I only find the real research questions in A1 and A5, so here I will only talk about these 2 articles. In A1, the research questions are 1. How do Chinese polysemes, Chinese collocation, and Chinese MWUs account for the impact of lexical transfer on Chinese language learners' use of English vocabulary? Number 2, what is the underlying reason that leads to the occurrence of negative lexical transfer from Chinese to English? And in A5, there are totally 3 research questions, which are: number 1, do L1 Urdu speakers face interference while learning L2 English? 2. What type of errors occur while learning L2 due to interference of L1? Number 3. Does L1 have the highest occurrence of interference? Okay, now we're still in part 2. But however, in this table, I just compare the theoretical framework and methodology. As you can see in A3, I didn't find any theoretical framework used in this study. So yeah, I just leave it blank. And also next in A2 and A4, as you can see, the frameworks that they conducted in this article is quite similar, which are language transfer, the concept of culture, constructive, contrast, contrastive analyze, hypothesis, error analysis, and interlanguage. However, in A1, the framework that used is that the lexical transfer taxonomy proposed by Dodigovich et al. In 2015. And in A5, the contrastive analysis proposed by Ellis in 1985 is again used by the researchers. Uh, on the other hand, on the right hand, the methodology of these five articles are listed in the table. In Article 1, it is said that this is a corpus-based research with mixed method. Uh, and in A2, detect the negative transfer under the perspective of narrow sense of culture, that is to say, idioms, cultural terms, and conventions in expression. In A3, this article tries to qualitatively identify and solve the pronunciation problems made by four regions of Chinese English speakers due to the negative transfer of mother tongue. In A4, the authors try to qualitatively investigate the main forms of transfer and finding the reasons of them. In A5, it is very clear introduced that the participants are 30 students of first semester from BS program aging around 18 to 21 from 11 universities of Pakistan who were studying who were studying English as a second language. The random sampling method was adopted in this study, and also researchers conducted and recorded online interviews of these participants. Okay, now we're moving on to the results or discussions of these five articles. In A1, there are 2 points. Number one, results suggested that more than half of the transfer errors are caused by Chinese polysems, which are followed by Chinese collocations and Chinese MWUs. Number two, in writing done by target students, 3.1627, 1.7305, and 1.3378 error can be attributed to Chinese polysems, Chinese collocations, and Chinese MWUs, respectively, in every 1,000 words language unit. While in A2, it is said that negative transfer of different culture in students' writings, in idioms and in English terms and expressions, and also it talks about the source of negative transfer from the cultural aspect. A. Thinking mode. B. Atheist, uh, aesthetic perception. And three. A C. Religious belief. Lastly, it talks about how to avoid active transfer in writings. A. From the teacher's role. And B. From the student's role. In A3, uh, yeah, it divided discussion section into three parts. Number one, for the mispronunciation problem due to dialects, the best way is to use the method of phonetic contrast. And for the mispronunciation problem due to the lack of the certain phonemes in their dialects or different places of articulation of two different languages, the best solution is to use the method of picture of place of articulation with teacher's help. Lastly, for the mispronunciation problem due to learners' forthright character in Northeast China, learners can use method of cavity and face muscles training. And then in A4, it's said that the positive transfer of mother tongue and its influences on English vocabulary acquisition are A. Positive transfer of phonetic, B. Positive transfer of word formation, and the negative transfer of mother tongue and its influences on English vocabulary acquisitions are A. Negative transfer of the comprehension of meaning of English words. B. Negative transfer of culture. Lastly, in A5, uh, it talks about the interference in the usage of articles and the usage of preposition and the use of subject verb agreement and interference regarding direct use of Urdu words. So part 3, to conclude this each article, uh yeah, this is the conclusion of each article. So I will talk about them one by one. In Article 1, detailed analysis of typical examples from each category indicates misselection of possible L2 equivalents and word-for-word translation as the most pronounced patterns of language transfer errors. It was then inferred that the dramatic difference of lexical specificity among languages and the nature of L2 lexical processing model in SLA and the lack of L2 knowledge could be significant underlying reasons for causing negative lexical transfer. While in A2, teachers should teach English language as well as its culture in their classroom, and most teachers do teach in this way. However, the result seems unpleasant since there's no effective way to integrate both language and culture in foreign language teaching, especially in English writing teaching. Therefore, both teachers and students should take some measures to avoid such language negative transfer. In A3, it said that Chinese learners have many problems in English pronunciation. Some solutions are put forward in this study, including the method of phonetic contrast, place of articulation, and cavity and face muscle training. In order to correct these problems, learners need to make a clear distinction between Chinese and English phonetic systems. At the same time, learners themselves and teachers ought to attach great importance to English pronunciation. It is strongly believed that through long-term adherence and scientific training, learners' English pronunciation will be improved. Let's continue. In A4, it is discussed that vocabulary is the foundation of language learning. So, second language learners should pay attention to summarizing the target language rules, utilizing positively transfers properly, and avoiding the interference of negative transfer. This paper provides some suggestions for Chinese learners to adopt in their later learning. Firstly, learners need to have a clear understanding of differences between two languages. Secondly, learners should cultivate the cross-cultural awareness. It is necessary for learners to acquire a second language under its cultural context instead of only focusing on the books, especially the textbooks. Therefore, the knowledge of Western culture will contribute to having a better understanding and memorizing of English words. In A5, current study reviewed four kinds of syntactic errors that influence L1 Urdu on L2 English. Firstly, interference in the usage of articles under the circumstances that there is neither definite article and nor one-to-one indefinite article in the Urdu language, which makes teaching English articles difficult. Secondly, interference in the usage of prepositions, owing to the fact that there's lack of or different prepositions in learners' mother tongue and no exact usage or adverbial nature of prepositions in Urdu. Thirdly, interference in the usage of subject-verb agreement, seeing that it is hard to remember several rules regarding subject-verb agreement and confusion in the number system of subject in Urdu. Lastly, interference regarding direct use of Urdu words, taking into consideration the reality that Both English and Urdu have different grammatical structures and less exposure of Pakistani learners to native environment. Part four, also the last part of my presentation, I will talk about my own thoughts on these five articles. After I read all of them, after I tried to compare all of them, I got these 6 points on my mind. So I will talk about them one by one. Number one, as an official language in the world, English is being valued by more and more developing countries in the world. Number two, in learning any second language, we will take certain language transfer strategies into account to help us understand and master the target language faster and more effectively. Number three, as we all know, everything or any learning method has its advantages and disadvantages, which is also known as double-edged sword. Number four, generally speaking, three of the five articles I read are related to lexical transfer between L1 and L2. In the remaining two articles, one is to study the phonetic transfer between the mother tongue and the second language. Another article is to discuss the transfer between the first language and the second language from the perspective of culture as a whole. Number five, as mentioned above, no learning method can be said to be perfect, so we need to treat dialectically the research of language transfer at any level: lexical, phonetical, syntactical, semantical, etc., between the mother tongue and the target language. Six, and also the lastly, to be honest, after careful reading and observation, it is easy to notice that in Article 2, 3, and 4, there is no clear instruction of methodology session, and there is no data collection process and data analysis results shown in their studies. In other words, these three articles only rely on the author's own subjective views to discuss and analyze the target topic. So I don't think these three articles have enough data and experimental evidence to support their views. However, the authors of these three journal articles, as I mentioned, are all written by Chinese scholars. Therefore, I suggest that Chinese scholars should pay more attention to the general format and norms of academic writing when publishing international journals. In addition, I think a research, whether qualitative or quantitative, data collection, data analysis, and methodology sessions are indispensable. Otherwise, we will not be able to explain and support our own arguments. Okay, I think that's all for my presentation. This is the end. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye.